Good afternoon, 49er faithful. Welcome to another episode with your host, Rob Schuh, a special Thursday edition. Always excited to get in an additional live stream during the week. Thrilled to have our returning guest. You all know him very well. Aaron with 49ers First Takes. Aaron, how you doing today?
Great, Rob. How you doing?
I am doing good, man. I am doing much better because of the 49ers' current win streak. I can honestly say that I needed this. I needed the 49ers to uplift me. I'm generally a positive guy. We joke about the fact that we compliment one another because I'm a glass half full type of guy. And, sometimes you can get a little bit skeptical and play the other side of that. But
Definitely.
for me, I had been struggling with the 49ers doing what they were doing early in the season. I needed them to pick it up, and boy, have they.
Yeah, they've been playing bully ball lately. They've been playing what I think is their identity, which is run the ball, control the clock, and let their defense kind of hunt and be on the field in short spurts. Because I think that longer the Niners defense is on the field, just because the current way it's constructed with just how the secondary is, you start to see the cracks. So if you can get those like short outbursts where the Niners offense runs the ball, does really good, holds the clock, and then they come on and they get those like quick 3 and outs, I think that's where the Niners are at their best.
Yeah, it is that complementary football. I noticed that earlier in the year that the worst position for our defense, and I'm sure is true with any defense, but when they were thrown onto the field after a turnover, which happened frustratingly frequently for the 49ers, the defense was out of sorts. Perhaps that's a combination of a new defensive coordinator. Perhaps that's simply a defense that isn't quite as physically talented as it has been in years past, although you would think they have the horses as compared to 2020 where they had so many injuries. But I noticed that if it wasn't set up perfectly for them to go out in a controlled environment, there was a stark difference between the ability to produce those 3 and outs and get off the field, give the ball back to the offense, or just allow defenses to march down the field, committing PIs seemingly with endless succession.
Yeah, and I think I think it slightly is personnel. I think the Niners are not as strong on defense in 20 as they were in 2019. It was just 2019 was the perfect storm. They had things just worked out perfectly. The pass rush was just ridiculous. Game changing type pass rush, at least for the first part of 2019. They struggled down the stretch a little bit when it was just
Yes.
Bosa, but this year the Niners really it's really yeoman's work. They really got to put in a lot of work, especially on defense, to get teams off the field. But I feel like I said, when they run the ball and they play their type of football, I feel like it somehow energizes their defense because their defense knows it's going to get some rest. Whereas, a team that marches down the field, scores, and then you turn the ball right back over to them. It's not a recipe for success,
It
even with
really
any
isn't.
defense in that matter.
It really isn't. And honestly, that's a great lead in for our first topic of putting the Seattle Seahawks out of their misery. What occurred to me in watching the Seahawks, and I try not to take great pleasure in other people's misery, but when it comes to the Seahawks organization and my emotions surrounding that team, that fan base, it's hard not to take a little bit of pride in the Seattle Seahawks struggling. But when I watch them against the Washington football team, and when I see a statistic that says they are far and away leading the league in the negative statistic of allowing other teams to possess the ball more than any team has in the history of the NFL, if they keep this up at this pace, I think they're down by 3 minutes over the next team that struggled with time of possession. It is very lopsided for this Seattle team. It sets up perfectly for what we were just talking about with the 49ers in possessing the ball and doing what they do. Is that how you feel it will end up breaking out, or is this division game going to get close?
I feel like anytime Russell Wilson is on the field and it's in that stadium, I feel like the Niners have had the worst history against Seattle in the last,
Yes.
I'd say, decade or about a decade. I just as much as I hate to admit it, they own us. They have owned us for the majority of the decade. Other than I don't even know how many games we've won against them versus how many, they've won against us. But
It skews heavily in their favor.
yeah, and I'm scared of Russell Wilson. I don't like the Seahawks. I am happy that they're struggling. I am happy that they might have to blow the whole thing up and start over. I take great joy in that. However, you know, I just have this uneasy feeling that if we go into this game thinking we're just gonna, smack these guys around and possess the ball and do what we've been doing the last couple weeks, and it's just going to be, par for the course. I think we're sadly mistaken. Now we could do that and it could work, but I just feel like the Niners of any game we've played so far this year, this game we have to be on our P's and Q's more than ever. Cause I feel like, this is one of your classic trap games.
Yes.
We're supposed to beat them. They're hurting. They're pretty much done anyways, but still, it's still the Seahawks. It's still a division game. Division games have a weird way of working out. I don't know what it is. Teams could be doing completely opposite. One team could be doing really good. Team could be doing really bad. Then they play each other and it's always a close game for some reason. And I just have that unsavory feeling with the Seahawks. And I feel like if the Niners don't come into this game with absolute focus and determination and just having that, fire in their rear end, I think this could be a game that we could lose if we don't come out with that intensity.
Yeah, it sets up to be a trap game. And I know 49er faithful are saying to themselves, yeah, but we already had our trap game. How could the 49ers possibly allow themselves to fall back into that rut when they so clearly fell flat against an Arizona team that we should have been able to dispatch relatively easily with those injuries that they had at that time? But it sets up that way. Seattle 3-8. It appears that their season has gone off the rails. It looks like the entire franchise could be melting down. So it's easy to see a team overlooking that and saying, well, they're in disarray. They won't be able to come out. They just played a very physical game against Washington. They had to travel back across the country, short rest for them because it was a Monday night game. So it's easy in the subconscious, in the back of 49ers minds, that they start to build up this list of reasons that they should win and not take into account the things they need to be cognizant of, which is Russell Wilson being on the field. I can guarantee this. There will be a get-right game for Russell Wilson at some point in the remainder of the season. That is a fact that I feel I can spit confidently. The question just becomes, will it be against the 49ers? Will they slip in that regard? When I saw Washington football team give the ball back to Russell Wilson with 2 minutes remaining with a chance to tie the game, I said to myself, that can't happen while I'm in Seattle. I will be there in the stands, and my heart would be in my throat if Russell Wilson gets the ball with 2 minutes left and a chance to tie or win the game. That is not the scenario the 49ers want to find themselves in, so they need to come out with some fire. They cannot be flat this game.
Yeah, and the thing with Seattle is, or with the 49ers, is the Niners have some pretty glaring issues still, even though they're winning. They're only one game above 500. It's not like we're, flying high and, we're 12, we're on the pace to be, whatever, 12-4 or whatever.
Right.
We're one game above 500. We still have some glaring holes in our team that are very, very obvious. You could watch games if you're not a complete homer and you actually are objective and you watch games like I do at an objective eye. Those things are still there. They're still below the surface. So the Niners have no reason to come into this game overconfident. They shouldn't be. Many reasons. Past history is one of them. And also it's Russell Wilson, man.
That's right.
Russell Wilson, I just saw one of the guys in the comments that Russ, let Russ cook or whatever. He said he's still scared of him. And I'm still scared of him. Russell Wilson, as much as I can't stand the Seahawks, I have mad respect for Russell Wilson. I always have, because his game is real. And the Niners always seem to have an issue getting him down or sacking him.
Oh my God, it's so frustrating to watch him scamper around the field and evade tacklers.
Right, and then it's those playground plays where like he runs around, and then you got a guy like DK, streaking up the sideline, and no one can catch him because he's so fast and so big. So those are the fears that are in my head, and I hope the Niners have that same focus going into this game, because if they don't, this is the type of game where the Niners could be caught off guard, and I just hope that they don't have that mindset. I hope they got that out of their system with Arizona, and they come into this game business as usual, come in, punch you in the mouth, play that time-consuming offense where we hold the ball for 10 minutes and score. And then just, it gives the defense a chance to rest, because, when you're on the field with Russell Wilson, you're going to be chasing him around. So this game makes me nervous. I don't know about you, but it makes me nervous.
It absolutely makes me nervous. And it is the type of game that, because of that, I think it's the big brother syndrome that gets me the most. It's that feeling I can't shake that, much like against the Rams, where the 49ers clearly seem to have an emotional edge over that team and can do some things against them at will, seemingly, even when the 49ers are struggling otherwise against other teams. I see that type of dynamic between the 49ers and Seattle. So that's where a sense of worry comes in. When I look at it analytically, I don't have that. It does match up very well for the 49ers. All those things that make it a trap game do set up favorably for San Francisco. The fact that Seattle is coming off of a very physical game, that I'm sure they are bruised and beaten against Washington football team. The short rest, travel, all of those things are very real, but somehow these division games just have a habit of working out very close. And to your point of respecting Russell Wilson, I think any 49er fan that doesn't acknowledge he's one of the deadliest in the league in those last couple of minutes with comeback victories, it's got to be between he or Rodgers or Brady that has the most fourth quarter comebacks in history in that time frame that they've all been in the league. He's deadly in that regard.
And we were discussing off camera how I told you when I was watching the game with my nephew and Tom Brady got the ball. It was the Tampa game right before the Niners game came on. And I looked at my nephew and I said, they left him too much time. And he's like, yep. And I was like, we knew it was going to happen. And it happened exactly the way we thought it was going to. You said you're about to be 43. I'm 42, going to be 42. We've seen a lot of football in our life. We've seen it countless times, whether it was Joe Montana, whether it was Tom Brady, whether it's Russell Wilson. I've seen it so many times. And for any Niner fan to go in and be completely just like, yeah, we got this, we're going to smack them. Like, I'm not saying you can't be a confident fan. I'm just a fan that has a different outlook because I've seen everything. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I'm not overconfident. I'm not underconfident. I just kind of react at what I see, and then I let it, go from there. Just because you're critical or just because you question if the Niners are going to come into this game flat doesn't make you not a fan.
No, not at all.
Some of us just have different ways of looking at things. Some of us are just, everything's perfect. The Niners are great. They can't do any wrong. And then there's people like me that kind of, they look at things with a critical eye. That's just, there's different types of fans, and, some people are more optimistic like you and Jay in the Bay. And then there's guys like me.
and there's Andre, who, it was a typo, but I'm going with this prediction. Andre has predicted a whopping victory of 51-4, which he then had to correct to 15-4. I
was going to say they're going to get two safeties on us,
but I'm keeping that 15-4, 51-4 prediction. I think that is what we should be shooting for, because we need to whoop up on these Seahawks. That would be the
best ending ever.
Oh my goodness. Ellis 10 here as well. I wasn't nervous until the injuries arrived. It's just holding the 49ers back like other teams. That's fair. I mean, there are a lot of injuries that I think the 49ers need to be concerned about in this matchup. And, that transitions right into our next topic there, which is, in fact, the injuries that the 49ers are dealing with. How do the losses of Deebo Samuel and Fred Warner affect the team as they go into this matchup against Seattle? Which one of the two, which do you see as the bigger concern?
Debo, 100%. Because Aziz has been playing out of his head. And I'm not saying we're not going to miss Fred, because we will, because he is the quarterback of that defense. He makes that thing, even though he maybe not having the statistical year, or maybe he looks like he's not his normal Fred Warner self. He's still, integral part of the defense. But when I think about how much Debo is a part of this offense and a part of this heartbeat of this team, it's going to be tough to replace. You can do only so much on the sideline, cheering your guys on or whatever. But Debo is irreplaceable. He's on a pace to be in the MVP conversation. People can say, yeah, that whatever. I mean, he is just. I've been critical of Debo Samuel in the past, and I stand corrected, and I'm okay to be corrected.
I like that admission.
He is fantastic. He is worth the money that they are going to pay him.
I was just going to say, have you now come full circle to believing he deserves the bag?
Yes. My only concern with Debo is his play style, just like Kittle.
Right.
Is susceptible to injuries. And you've kind of brought this to my attention, and other people have too. If you're willing to accept that you're going to lose some games from these guys on a yearly basis, kind of like a Gronkowski, but you're going to go with the over and how much they give you and how much they are a factor when they're on the field,
right?
Then yeah, he deserves the bag. I never thought I would say this because I was like uber critical of him in the beginning, but he has blossomed.
It's fair to say that he hadn't shown us how special he was, that you still had reason to have those concerns that you're talking about, but he hadn't flashed this yet. So I don't know that it's surprising that it took you a little while to come around to that.
Yeah, I've gotten some jerseys. I don't buy quarterback jerseys ever. And I'm like, my next purchase might have to be a Debo Samuel jersey. If he gets the bag, I have to wait till he gets a contract. If he gets a contract, I will get a Debo jersey.
You don't want to be the dude that invests in that premium jersey and then all of a sudden you find out he's been traded. I'm guessing that there were some unhappy DeForest Buckner fans that had recently purchased new jerseys.
I did the same thing with Kaepernick. I have like a $400 Kaepernick jersey in my closet. The authentic is that authentic gets. I bought into the hype when he first came to the 49ers, and one of the biggest financial mishaps, misfires, whatever you want to call it, I've ever had. And I will live with it for the rest of my life. I leave it in my closet as a reminder of how stupid I was to jump on that train. And so, yeah. Even if Trey Lance balls out next year, I'm not buying his jersey.
You're holding back on that one now?
Years. Yeah. These people that have already got his jersey, I'm like, oh, that's... But, hey, whatever you want to do. It's your money, but I'm just... Yeah. Until a guy gets like a longer contract, that's how I kind of determine my jersey purchases.
That's fair. We have a history in my household of buying jerseys for people that are then out the door. I believe there is a Buckner jersey hanging in our closet. There is a Quad Alexander jersey hanging in our closet. There's a whole series of them. It just seems to be bad luck in that regard. And I've just sort of accepted that that's going to be the case, that if I want a jersey, it could be for a player that ends up leaving. That's the NFL business, I would say. Well, I'll take the other side of this because I think you're spot on with Debo, that's near impossible to replace. The emotional lift that he provides, the percentage of the offense that runs through him. And I think it's fair to say that because of his success, it opens up more for Elijah Mitchell, who sort of has been the 1B to Debo's 1A as far as importance to the offense. Although you might be able to make a case to flip that because of the 49ers being a run-first team. But I believe that what Debo has been doing created the opportunity for Elijah Mitchell to step in and then do what he has done. But on the other side of it, in a matchup against Seattle, where you have a very savvy head coach, very savvy defensive coordinator in Ken Norton Jr., and an extremely savvy quarterback in Russell Wilson, I wonder if having the quarterback of your defense out might end up being the bigger factor. I think when you compare talent of how Warner has performed this season, where it hasn't lived up to, I think, what fans would have hoped from him after the big bag he got, and what Debo has done, which is just blown away all expectations. It's clear. Kittle. Debo is the more valuable of the two. But as far as putting the defense in a position to be successful or getting tricked by a veteran who's savvy, such as Russell Wilson, I wonder if he'll be able to take advantage of the defense being out of position. Because this secondary, quite honestly, doesn't need much help in finding themselves out of position. It's been better in recent weeks, but they are suspect. They leave me trepidatious about their ability to stop them. So it'll be interesting how that sets up, especially down the stretch, if the game remains close, as division games often do.
Yeah, my hope is the Niners come out and just put up points quickly and just, be aggressive with it. And, if they can get up a couple touchdowns and then just start, when they get the ball, possessing it, play keep away. Because I feel like the more time you leave for Russell Wilson, no matter the game, no matter the time, no matter the score, it's always a chance he's going to pull it out. He is that good. He's Hall of Fame. He's on that trajectory. I don't think he's there yet, but he is a Hall of Fame trajectory type player.
I think so too.
I don't want to admit it because I'm a Niners fan, but
that's right.
I mean, look at him. He's one of the best ever.
He throws the most catchable deep ball I have ever seen. There's varying degrees of optimism in the comments. We got the super chat that I got to bring in. Chris, a fellow sneakerhead, I got to say thank you for that. He thinks maybe he's being overly optimistic, but I think we've got this 100%. I don't think that's overly optimistic. It may be optimistic, as you said, but that's where I am. I have these fears that are unsubstantiated, that are emotional response to that feeling of the little brother syndrome that the Niners seem to have against the Seahawks. But this sets up my logical brain, which is where I rest most of the time, is telling me that we've got this locked. It's my emotional side that Karthik brings up here, that Seattle's always had our number for some reason, where I get that. But I feel that in my gut, like in my tummy. I'm like, I'm a little nervous, a little tummy trouble. But that's because of this syndrome that we have against them. Andre coming in, pointing out that it looks like their team is relying on a lot of depth as well, that they are a team that is potentially injured. Maybe I'm reading that wrong. Maybe Andre is looking at us relying on our depth in this game. But either way, I mean, it sets up to be that type of trap game that we are talking about. It sets up to be something that the 49ers could overlook. You would hope that the loss of these players for us fires up the 49ers, that they know they're without their biggest weapon in Deebo Samuel, that they know they're missing their quarterback on the defense in Fred Warner, and that they accommodate for that by attacking this team, getting all over them, putting their foot on their throats.
Yeah, if overcompensate ever fit a narrative, it would be in this. I mean, the Niners have to overcompensate for their losses, and everybody has to play with just a little bit more urgency and focus, and play with your brother in mind that is down, your fallen soldier, so to speak. I hate using war references, but play for the other man, play for the guy next to you, play for the guy that's hurt. And if the Niners can do that, I think the Niners are the better team. But football isn't one on paper, and the Niners got to go out there and do it. And I know Seattle's been their house of horrors. I mean, look how hard it took. Look how difficult it was for us to beat them in 2019 to seal that division. It literally came down to like the half-yard line, that close.
Yeah.
So for any Niners fan to go into this game being like super overconfident, like we got this, I'm telling you, man, just be realistic, be confident, but be realistic. You know? But that's just me.
In that game, I was there in Seattle for that one where big play Dre had to stop.
Big play Dre.
I literally did not celebrate it immediately because of what had just transpired a few weeks ago, where the Falcons had actually gotten it into the end zone and replay reversed the call. So it happened. All the Niners fans around me erupted in pure joy. And I had this bad feeling in the pit of my stomach that the refs were going to come in and change the game and say, oh, I'm just kidding. You guys actually lost. And so I held my breath in the stadium. I never got a proper chance to really erupt. I did once I learned, and we sat there for 30 minutes and chanted with 49ers fans, and it was glorious. But I honestly, it was a moment of like, uh-oh, it was that close of a game. I have to give it to Kim here that I think this is a big key for the 49ers is the communication in the secondary, in particular with those two safeties that Kim is referencing here with Tart and Ward stepping up. If they can be the back end voice of the defense where they're getting the secondary aligned properly and there's less weight on Azeez in that regard, then I'll feel better about the defense's chances of putting themselves in the right position.
Definitely. And it's good to have both Ward and Tart back there. I have a lot more confidence with them in the pass coverage department than, say, a guy like Hufanga. He, as good as he is in the box and good as he is in, supporting the run and all that, making plays at the line of scrimmage, his pass defense is something to be desired right now. So.
Yes, that is very true. All right, before we get on to our next topic, I'm throwing in Ellis10 here with another super chat coming in. It's just a matter of time before the Niners blow out Seattle in Seattle. What if the Seahawks are underestimating this game based on the history? I love the optimism. I love the idea of that happening, and I will be in the stands wholeheartedly rooting for an ass whooping, if you will. Nothing would make me happier. I do not want this to be a close game. Like I said, if it is a close game and Russell Wilson gets the ball with time remaining, my heart will be in my throat. I am praying for this type of a blowout because we need it. I think that would provide a cathartic release for this team. There has to be a moment where you in this dynamic of younger brother, big brother, that it feels like the Niners are stuck within with Seattle. There has to be a moment where the younger brother rises up and just says, enough with this. The dynamic is changing from here on out. You hoped it was the case when that happened in 2019. It clearly was not. A big victory like Ellis is predicting here could get the monkey off our back, to use a phrase Steve Young is so fond of.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. Someone take the monkey off my back, and then he had Gary Plummer figuratively rip it off for him.
Yes, he did. That was a beautiful
Gary
scene.
Plummer reminded me of my dad. He had that same mustache. I was
nice.
Like, yeah. I've always had a special place in my heart for Gary Plummer.
He was a hell of a linebacker.
Yes, he was.
Yes, he was. All right, let's get into our next topic here. Will the real George Kittle please stand up? What has been your impression of George Kittle's performance so far this year?
I'm just confused. I don't know if it's, team scheming to stop him. Is it Jimmy just being, kind of the locked in, I know where I'm going with the ball. Seems like when Jimmy gets a favorite, he tends to use it. Like
he really does.
Emmanuel Sanders or Debo now this year. So I don't know what the real problem is. I heard something on Grant's channel where Grant was kind of talking about, has Kittle lost a step? Is he slower than he was? He's still a dynamic, probably the best blocking tight end I've ever seen, but he just hasn't been a factor this year. We really haven't talked about George Kittle. He hasn't had one of those games where he has 6 catches for 190 yards and a couple touchdowns. Like I don't know what it is. I don't know if he's just still ailing with the injury that he had, or the Niners are just been scheming away from him by running the ball and throwing to Debo and running Debo and getting Ayuk more involved. But all I know is that with Debo being out, we need George Kittle to step up and be the George Kittle of old. The George Kittle in New Orleans who carried defensive backs on his shoulders.
You give me a chance to throw up my current merch here?
I was setting this up. I was putting it on.
What is this? A little Furious George? For anyone who didn't see this merch release on the show last night, this is an oldie but a goodie, one I made just for me and my family that I'm now offering for anyone that is interested. Reach out to 49ers mailbag at gmail.com
We
or
need
hit me
that,
in the
George.
comments.
We need that, George. That's the George we need. We need that George to please stand up. The hell with Slim Shady. We need George Kittle to stand up, man. We need, this is a type of game where I think George Kittle could maybe shine, because the emphasis is going to be solely on trying to stop that run game. So what's the best way to attack a team that's keying on the run? Play action. So
yes,
we'll see.
I will say, so I agree with James here, who puts in their D-line is currently jello, pound the rock, pound the rock, pound the rock. I agree with that sentiment that if a team has a weakness, even if they are then playing to compensate for that weakness by putting 8 men in the box, 6-man fronts, I think you have to establish what you do well. The 49ers cannot get away from their identity. They have to force the issue and see if they can be successful on the ground. But I think that will set up for some very key third downs, right? Some third and mediums, third and shorts where you want to pass the ball. And George Kittle needs to step up there. So I still want the focus of this game to be on pounding the ball, running the ball, getting the right number of carries that keeps, best defense being keep Russell Wilson on the sideline. Don't give him the ball. Get that time of possession out of whack in the way that the Seahawks have allowed it to be throughout this entire season. I do think that, here we go, Ellis is saying it too, Kittle seems to be more active in the blocking game rather than the passing game. Injury prevention, I don't know about the last part. I don't think that it's intentional. I think this 49ers offense has been disjointed. Aside from Deebo Samuel and Elijah Mitchell, the rest of the offense has been disjointed. Kittle has been amazing in run blocking. There have been some pancake highlights that I go back and giggle at watching, just the way he giggles when he's doing it and pancaking fools. So I do think that side of his game is established. When we ask who is George Kittle, will the real George Kittle please stand up with regard to run blocking? We know what he is. The inconsistency in the pass game, I'm not putting all on him. I'm thrilled to finally have seen him used as a red zone target, for him to finally have gotten a few touchdowns, a couple games in a row, because that's just so rare for him. But the rest of the offense, inability to spread the ball around, aside from Jimmy's performance where he hit 12 different receivers in one of the early games of the season, we've been off track since then. I think this sets up to be a game where the 49ers can actually take a positive out of a negative. Missing Deebo Samuel could allow the 49ers to rediscover George Kittle, to rediscover Brandon Ayuk, and get them more involved in the process. And hopefully that creates a balanced offense going forward that when Deebo returns to it, just becomes even more dominant.
Yeah, because I think somebody in the comments said that Jimmy, can be a one-read QB, and I totally agree with that. I think Jimmy sometimes predetermines where he's going with the ball, and I think that sometimes leads to his interceptions. But also, he gets comfortable with the guy, and that guy might be Deebo or Emmanuel Sanders like a couple years ago. And now they're being forced to rely on other people. And you're right, maybe this is the perfect opportunity to rediscover George, because I feel like for us to reach our full potential and get as far as we possibly can this year, number 85 has to be reborn. He has to, be the old George Kittle. And when I think of the offense and the weapons we have when they're healthy, Ayuk, Deebo, and Kittle, and then also Elijah Mitchell, it's pretty damn good offense, when healthy. So
it is.
Hopefully they just rediscover him this week, like you said, and they're forced to.
You would think so. And Chris agrees here. Chris Royal coming in. Some of it seems to be play calling. He isn't often the first or second read, and we all know Jimmy sometimes acts like a one-read quarterback. That sums up what you were alluding to just a moment ago there. And I have to say that it appears to be a trend for Jimmy, that he does struggle in getting through significant progressions. You could always go and find those instances where he does. But he seems to lock on to that first read just a little bit longer than usual. And what I'm not seeing is, in reference to Chris's first statement, is the play calling designed to get Kittle involved as much as years past. It felt like we forced the ball to Kittle in years past. And it seems
True.
like we forced the ball to Deebo Samuel now, but we're not doing it with George Kittle. You would think that it sets up to force it to him this game.
Oh, I hope so, because I'm one of his. I love George Kittle. Like, I'm a huge George Kittle fan. You know, I was a little critical in the early part of the year. I was calling him Mr. Glass because he's injured all the time.
Sure.
But I mean that in a, like, I want to be proved wrong type of way.
Yeah.
Where I want to be that guy where somebody says, yeah, you called him Mr. Glass and he just had a 8-catch, 140-yard game. And I'm like, okay, cool. That's great. So I say that, but I mean it out of love because he's one of my favorite players. And I don't know. I just want him to be the old George Kittle with the first down point and all that stuff. And
yes,
the just acting like a little kid who just got their favorite, like a Happy Meal or something. And they're just running around screaming. I love that George Kittle. So it's contagious.
It is. It's so fun to watch. It fires up the rest of the offense and it sets a happy tone for, let's be honest, for Jimmy Garoppolo, who in my mind is not a tone setter. He responds to energy of others well. He's very much a team guy. Everyone in the locker room seems to love him, right? I mean, it's not that he doesn't have respect. It's not that people don't enjoy his personality, but he's not really the vocal leader of that offense. And Deebo has been picking up that bag recently. With him out, you have to think that it's got to be Trent Williams, George Kittle. Elijah Mitchell doesn't strike me as an overly vocal individual. He's a rookie. So it's got to be some other key players. And Kittle, to me, is absolutely one of those.
Yeah, when I look at a guy like Garoppolo, I don't see Peyton Manning ripping into Jeff Saturday. I don't see Tom Brady, screaming on the top of his lungs at everybody on the sideline. Jimmy's just kind of like, when the Niners are doing good and the running game is working and the defense is playing good, like Jimmy's all smiles, everything's great. But you're right, he's not that tone setter, like, fire and brimstone like a Ronnie Lott was back in the day.
No.
And I wish he was sometimes, because I'm personally, when I played even just backyard sports, I was a very competitive person. And like, I hated losing. I was miserable, like, I'm not big on the whole middle of the field at the end of the game trading jersey things. I'm just old school. Like, I hate that. Like,
you want less good sportsmanship. You want them to still be angry.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I feel like you got to keep that edge. And quarterbacks who have that edge and kind of give that to their team, I feel like it goes a long way. So I don't know, but that's just, I mean, he's not that kind of personality. He's not an alpha personality.
That's a fair point. And speaking of edges, transition to our next topic. Nick Bosa has certainly had a dominant season so far. It statistically, other than the rate of pressures, is superior to his 2019 season, which was a phenomenal season. He's on track to hit somewhere in the neighborhood of 15 to 17 sacks by the end of the season. He's more than capable of having a 3-4 sack performance. You could see him hitting that 20 sack mark if he has one of those dominant performances. But on the other side, it's a who's who of nobodies that has been able to grab hold of that. You've gotten a flash from Arden Key here and there, but mainly when he's moved inside. So how do you see that bookend defensive end position breaking out opposite of Bosa?
I mean, I don't think it really has this year. John Lynch kind of, being the master politician that he is, kind of sold us a bag of goods about all these guys and the depth we had with Samson Ebukam and Arden Key and all this and that. And none of that's really none of that's really come to fruition.
No.
At least not yet. When I watch 49er games, I see Bosa and a whole lot of nothing. I will say Kevin Givens the other day really surprised me when he blew up that play in the backfield. I forgot exactly what happened. I don't know if it was in the run play or
Yeah, that was when he blew up Dalvin Cook, and that was actually the
and he hurt
injury
him.
to Cook, where he
Yeah,
whatever that was, pec muscle or dislocated shoulder, I think it was.
Yeah, and I just haven't saw it, and it's frustrating because I think he could be more dangerous if he had someone on the other side. The Niners, as usual, went into this year putting their hopes and dreams on injured players like Verrett, and then they also the whole D Ford situation.
Right.
And of course, D Ford really wasn't doing much when he was playing this year. Because he wasn't playing enough because they're trying to keep him healthy.
Right.
And now he's hurt and he may never come back. And yeah, D Ford when he was at his best in 2019, that pass rush was unstoppable. But it's literally been it's been Bosa and nothing else. And it's just concerning because I feel like I watch games and I see quarterbacks really having their way, standing back there with not really any pressure in their face. And the way I think the Niners run a lot of zone. So like it tends to, when you run zone and you have no pass rush, quarterbacks can pretty much just dink and dunk.
Yeah, that's trouble. There are holes in the zone. That's sort of by design, right? And so, yeah, if you give too much time when you are in zone coverage, that's a recipe for disaster, 100%. I agree with Eric here that it's, Bosa may be unstoppable, but because the NFL is allowing a WWE style chokeholds on the man, he can't get it done by himself. I think you hit on something where I bought into the bag of goods that John Lynch sold us in the offseason. I predicted that this was one of the deepest defensive lines in the league. It was going to be wave after wave of pass rusher coming in, wreaking havoc on the quarterback. And the reality has not matched up to that in the slightest. And when I look back as to where was the error in my logic, what I realized is I was counting on a bunch of players to respond to new coaching and to finally, fulfill their potential, to step up in new roles. Samson Ebukam is a perfect example. Someone that comes over from the Rams who plays reasonably sparingly when he was with Los Angeles, but had production. And so we multiplied that out. We said, well, if you give him greater number of snaps, his production will go up accordingly. And that hasn't happened to this point. Took a flyer on Charlie Omenihu, brought him in, and he has flashed one or two plays, but not enough consistency to make you believe that he's going to turn into something. And then the false hope of D Ford providing value this year. He couple of sacks, 3 sacks, I think it was, before getting injured again, that were great. A great production in that regard, especially as a percentage of total snaps that he had. But now we're back to this game of I feel very badly for him. I'm not going to degrade him for being injured. This is the NFL. It's tough business. Back injuries are very serious. I think he should take care of his health first and foremost. But we open the practice window, and Kyle Shanahan hints at maybe he's going to be back that first week they open up the practice window. Come and gone. He's not practicing this week. It really feels as if that practice window may have been opened and may shut after the 21 mandatory days of being open. And if that happens, or if he's put back on IR, that's it for the season. And we held that roster spot for very little production, right? So it goes back to poor roster construction in trying to bring in somebody to complement Bosa on the other side.
Yeah, you hope the Niners learn from this, John Lynch especially. From now on, you gotta take it easy on trying to use oft injured players to fill key positions. I feel like you've said in the past, you use those kind of players to fill depth or, an extra piece here and there, a piece that you're not necessarily counting on play to play.
Yeah.
When you use those type of players to actually fill starter roles, you're a fool. And I'm not trying to call John Lynch a fool, but it's foolish. It's a very Moneyball approach.
It's a poor strategy. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Frustrating.
I like Texas Niner here. I am hoping that Charlie is our man, that there's someone who's going to step up. But at this point, I don't have a whole lot of faith in it. Just to answer a relevant question here, I am going to be at the game this weekend in Seattle. James, I should be behind the 49ers bench. I had my eye on a particular ticket that I was going to pull the trigger on, waiting for that price to drop a little bit. May have gotten greedy in waiting for that price to drop, and that ticket vanished. And so I don't currently have my seat. I am wildly confident I will get a seat. I went to Miami without having bought a Super Bowl ticket and ended up pulling the trigger once prices dropped a bit. So I play that game of wait and see, but I think I will be on the 49er sideline. Please hit me up on Twitter at the Left Shoe. Let me know where you're going to be. I saw a comment earlier about a march that's happening. I want to be involved with other Niner faithful before that game. Just want to throw that out there. All right, transitioning into our next topic. It sets up, as we have said, this Seattle defensive line is suspect. They have allowed teams to run on them pretty consistently so far this year. They have allowed teams to dominate in time of possession, setting up an NFL record by a mile as a team that has been dominated in time of possession so far. It seems to set up in the way for another Elijah Mitchell special. How do you see it working out, Aaron?
On paper, it seems like it could be a big Elijah Mitchell game, and if that's the case, and if they're successful with it, then more power to them. I hope it works out. I would like to see a little bit of Jeff Wilson Jr. too, just to give him a little bit of a breather once in a while.
Fewer carries for the rookie.
Yeah, I feel like less is good sometimes, or less is more. I think the same. I don't know, whatever. But if it comes down to being an Elijah Mitchell game, and it's been how it's been the last 3 weeks, I'm totally fine with that. I'm starting to think, but all the statistical things that have been flashed on Twitter and even in the chat, it's looking like Elijah Mitchell might have a very strong game this week. So if that's the case, let's do it. I'm totally fine with it. The kid he's not the biggest guy, but man, he runs with power for the size that he is. And he's just, I feel like he's just scratching the surface really with his ability. And what a find, Rob, what a find. A 6th-round running back. That's why you never spend money on running backs, man. You just don't do it. They're everywhere. And if you have a Shanahan in your coaching staff, you're going to find them. So, Bobby Turner doesn't hurt either.
I was just going to say, this one's for Bobby Turner. Bobby Turner is my hero.
He is the man. I mean, just look at the guys that they've had. Mostert, Matt Breida, and now this guy. Even Jeff Wilson Jr. I mean, just it's proven that you don't need to spend big bucks and draft capital on a running back.
Proven even more so by the idea that when they have spent valuable dollars and valuable draft picks, those are the ones that have not worked out for this team. When you spent big money on Jet McKinnon, everyone, when you spent it, was like, whoa, that was a strange deal for a guy who's never been a starter. Turns out it was a strange deal that didn't warrant the money that we gave him. Joe Williams, traded up to select him, never played it down for us, right? And then another one, the story has yet to be written on Trey Sermon. I remain hopeful that he will be able to turn it around. But so far in this season, it seems to underscore this idea that the 49ers are better off looking for and finding value at the position. Yeah, I believe that this does set up to be a favorable game for Elijah. And I'm going to key off of what Texas Niner throws in here, even though I know this was more in response to Bosa and the defense. But I do think it highlights something that is true for this game. So Texas Niner says, what's huge that I haven't heard yet is flow of game. When we are running well, the defense feeds off of that. Plus all the time of resting on the bench. Way more fresh each time they go out there. I'll touch back on, when they have the sudden change of possessions, this defense is put in very poor positions. And I think we all know those sudden change of possessions this season, and I think most seasons with Jimmy G at the helm, tend to happen when we're in the passing game, because most of our turnovers emanate from quarterback, either a throw to a linebacker that he seems to just be throwing the ball directly to. And I'm a big fan of Jimmy G and what he brings to the team, but I'm going to criticize him when I see flaws, and throwing to linebackers is one of them. And then when he's dropping back, he's not always careful with the ball. And he certainly has had a few sack fumbles in this season. Elijah Mitchell, on the other hand, is very solid to this point, right? And so I feel more secure in our ability to hold on to the ball, milk the clock, keep the defense rested on the sideline by making sure that this is an Elijah Mitchell game, by keeping the focus on him and forcing the Seahawks to prove that they can stop us if, in fact, they can. I don't think that they will. I got an interesting comment here from Niners Sickness that I want to bring in. Shout out to Niners Sickness as well. Say what's up. But Hufanga at linebacker this Sunday. What are our thoughts about that? I think with the depth at linebacker, it's going to be a necessity. They are going to be in many nickel and dime setups where you have those additional players, K'Wan Williams and Hufanga, on the field acting more as linebackers. And that seems to be a pretty good match for Hufanga's skill set. Would you say, Aaron?
Yeah, he plays better closer he gets to the line of scrimmage. I feel like the farther out you put him, his inexperience, or at least, the reason why he fell in the draft for the specific concerns that he had show. So, yeah, I'm totally excited because he has a nose for the ball. He's an explosive tackler for such a small guy, which is always awesome. You see these little firecracker type dudes like him, and they lay I love hits. I love it when you can hear it at home watching a game and you can hear helmets crackle.
That
oh my
crack
gosh,
is brutal.
I love it. I'm the type of guy, even though I didn't play professional sports, I love a solid, just crushing hit where a guy is just put down, like Sheldon Brown taking out Reggie Bush all those years ago on that screen pass. Absolutely, I love hits like that. So yeah, I think he'll do well the closer he is to the line of scrimmage.
How about, you just called to mind for me that hit Dante Whitner laid on, was it Deuce? Who was Deuce Staley for the Saints in that 2011 playoff game where, I thought
it was Pierre Thomas.
Pierre Thomas, yeah, where he knocked him out, fumble, recovery, set the tone for that game.
Oh, that was what that to me was one of the reasons we won that game. It was like, the Saints were driving. It's, business as usual for Drew Brees and company. And then, boom, out of nowhere.
That was awesome. So
beautiful.
Awesome. I just want to pull this in because it's an interesting tidbit that I hadn't thought of, but seems like it could be true. Sean bringing in, McKinnon was brought in and paid because he was planning on getting Kirk Cousins, which we all know to be true, that Shanahan was coveting Cousins, which was his quarterback, and it would help Kyle get that offense rolling faster, and didn't happen. I had never considered that angle, nor had I heard it put out there, but it makes a ton of sense.
It does.
It really does. All right, let's get into what may end up being our last topic here, and it's a good one, ladies and gentlemen. With the remaining games on the schedule, what do we got? 6 games left, Aaron? We got 6 games remaining? Do the Niners...
I think so.
Do the Niners need to win out?
I think they do. I don't think the Niners can afford another loss. I feel like it would. I think another loss, one, it might let somebody leapfrog them.
Yeah.
And 2, I feel like their momentum would be affected. I feel like right now the Niners are playing with momentum. And they're dangerous when they have momentum.
Yes.
And this team is a little fickle sometimes because emotionally they can kind of get thrown off track, I notice. They run real high and sometimes they run real low. So got to win out. Got to do your best. I know chances of it happening are probably pretty low, but it just, for me, it's like a mindset thing. And it's also, the better we have, better seed we have, the the better chance it betters our chances in the playoffs of maybe even hosting a wild card game. So who knows?
Right. So I really love this point that you brought up that Jay, I think, is agreeing with here, a momentum killer. And this is a very streaky team that I believe lost its confidence early in this season. And you could
Absolutely.
see the players being dejected, not carrying an assertion into games. And the NFL is so much about physical dominance of one man over another, of one-on-one matchups, of one team physically imposing their will on another. In particular, with the 49ers being a team that their identity is to impose their will on opposing defenses by establishing a run game, milking the clock, keeping the other offense on the sideline. That very much is a disheartening way in which to put your foot on other teams' necks. I could see it being a momentum killer. And I do fall more on Avtar's side here that we can afford to lose 2 more. I do think we could go 4-2, end up 10-6 at the end of that, and still be in the driver's seat for the 6th seed at that point. At worst case, probably the 7th seed. With LA,
Do you mean 11? Do you mean 11-6?
10-7. Sorry, 10-7.
10-7.
Yeah, 10. I think 10-7 gets you in the playoffs,
Okay.
which would be 4-2 the rest of the way, being at 6-5 right now. But what I want to stay with is that momentum. That if the 49ers drop one of the easy games, and this game this weekend is not going to be easy, but they may go into it believing that it's easy. A lot of Niner faithful are going to go into it believing that it's easy because the team has a record that says 3-8. If you lost to the Seattle Seahawks, the momentum is undone. The surety, the confidence is undone. The worry of another series of losses piling up as they did when the 49ers were playing inconsistently at the beginning of the season rises back up. And so
Definitely.
I do think for this team to really have a shot at dominance, a shot at doing something in the playoffs, I think that they should want to run the table. That should be what their core belief is. We're going to win this one out, right? And then if one loss sneaks up on you, okay, you still keep that momentum. But I don't know. I could see them piling up. I stick with the idea that 10-7 will get them in, but I think the confidence needs to remain high for this team.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with you.
Yeah, people see it as this game being a must win. I agree with that wholeheartedly. If you're going to lose one game remaining on the schedule, I mean, there are some tough ones that remain. Cincinnati has an offense that is putting up a lot of points. We have a suspect
they
secondary.
scare me.
They do. The Tennessee Titans were traveling across country on a short week. It's Christmas week. Derrick Henry might be activated by that point. He could be back in the game. We will struggle against a talented back like that. You would think that
Most
one
definitely.
sets up to be a tough game. The Rams, with everything going against them now, may have their backs up against the wall in week 17 and may need a victory to save their season. So you know that they're going to give everything that they can. So I do think this one sets up to be a must-win, a tone setter, a game the 49ers need in order to shirk this feeling of Seattle sort of owning them in the way that LA does, and a momentum builder heading out to Cincinnati the following week.
Yeah, I feel like this game is a must win. And then after this game, it's a series of 1-game seasons. Just take care of the business this week, take care of the business this week. But I
Yeah.
feel like this game, mentality wise, because of what Seattle has done to this team over the course of a long time, I think psychologically we win this game. I think it sets us up for a good finish.
It
Whereas
does.
if we come into this game and lose, it doesn't give me the best feeling going forward.
No, I'm with Texas Niner here. Seahawks are like when the Giants match up against the Dodgers. There's just more to it. There's more emotion in the game. The players, it means more to each and every one of them. You see it in the physicality of the way they play on the field. And I also have to give it to Eric as well, that the more acceptable losses, the ones that quite honestly, the Titans being one that I chalked up at the beginning of the year when I was more confident about this team as being a loss, right? Short week, travel, Christmas time, Derrick Henry. That sets up to be a very formidable matchup. So everything else, because of how tricky, at a minimum, those two games will be, everything else sets up to be a must win. But I love your take in that it's got to be week to week. They can't get ahead of themselves. That is what would kill them against Seattle. If they've already moved on mentally to Cincinnati, if they're already thinking about, well, that's a high-powered offense that we've got to worry about. The Seahawks are, down and we can kick them while they're down. No, this is playoff atmosphere. I'm going to be making noise like it's the playoffs while I'm there in the stadium in Seattle. I'll be quiet as a church mouse when the 49ers offense is on the field. But other than that, I will be making a ruckus because I think it is playoff type atmosphere.
Yeah, and I think the Niners can't afford to have any overconfidence. And like I said, they're 6-5. They're only one game above 500. It took them a lot of work to get to where they are. So I just don't think I don't think they are overconfident, but I don't think if they weren't overconfident and they're starting to be, that would be detrimental for sure.
It would. Well, we've reached the end of the hour. To anybody that doesn't follow Aaron on 49ers First Takes, go Google that. He's on YouTube, 49ers First Takes. I usually have the description down, the link down in the description of the video. I didn't remember to do that today, so just go ahead and Google it. Give him a subscribe because he has phenomenal content over there on his channel, and I'm often over there joining him on his content as well. So you want to see more of this face, you got to subscribe to that face so that you can see more of both of these faces.
Yeah, because I was going to say something funny, but I can't think of
it. Every now and then it just doesn't come out right.
Nope.
All right, thank you for joining us today, Aaron. It's always a pleasure to see you, my friend. I will be on with Grant Cohn tomorrow. I've yet to confirm that it will be the 11 o'clock hour. That's our usual time, as long as the 49ers practice and their press conference doesn't mess with that. I'll be on with him at 11 and then going live on my channel at 12:15 immediately following the live broadcast with Grant. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today. Until next time.